The story of Kelsey Turner, a former American model who appeared in popular men's magazines like Maxim and Playboy, serves as a stark example of this. The crime she committed with several accomplices shocked the public with its brutality, ruthlessness, and lack of logic. The young woman, who aspired to a life of beauty, carefree ease, and affluence, not only lost everything she had, but also ended up behind bars. In Turner's case, the most tragic aspect is that the victim of the bloody act orchestrated by the blonde was a well-known and respected psychiatrist, Dr. Thomas Burchard, renowned for his successful long-term practice and numerous scholarly works. He was also known for his boundless generosity. The doctor was involved in charity work, helping sick children and single mothers. His good deeds ultimately cost him his life. All the participants in these events stood trial and are now serving their sentences in correctional facilities. Let's go back a few years to understand how and why the elderly doctor, who dedicated his life to helping others, met his end. The downfall of Kelsey Turner, a model and single mother Kelsey Nicole Turner, née Ingram, was born on March 5, 1993, in the port city of Norfolk, Virginia. She was the second child of Samantha Ingram, a would-be model and dancer, and Christopher Ingram, a simple laborer. Kelsey grew up alongside her older brother, Colin. Shortly after Kelsey's birth, the family moved to the small industrial town of Jonesboro, Arkansas, where she spent most of her childhood. A few years later, her parents divorced. Her father returned to Virginia and largely lost contact with his former wife and their children. Kelsey grew into a striking beauty with a perfect figure and model looks. School didn't interest her much. She was more into parties with friends, dating, and attending various events. She dreamed of fame, gracing magazine covers, giving interviews, and walking red carpets. However, Kelsey lacked any real talent. Her youth and good looks were her only assets. In high school, she began attending castings, hoping to become a model. Her mother, Samantha, who once aspired to be a model herself, enthusiastically supported her daughter's endeavors. Kelsey managed only a couple of shoots for clothing catalogs. At 18, Kelsey married Jerry Turner. She was already pregnant at their wedding and soon gave birth to a daughter, Beverly. Despite the arrival of their child, the marriage was short-lived, ending in divorce. By the age of 20, having given up on runway modeling, Kelsey decided to pursue a career as a men's magazine model. She created a portfolio with provocative photos and sent them to various publications, soon catching the attention of several men's magazines. Kelsey saw this as the beginning of a dazzling career and her ticket to the glamorous, carefree life she had always dreamed of. For a few years, she regularly received shooting offers. She eagerly gave interviews, attended events, and tried to make valuable connections. However, her career highlights were one-off shoots for Playboy and Maxim and a photo session, an interview for 110 magazine. She traveled to Los Angeles and Las Vegas for these opportunities. In an interview, Kelsey candidly described herself saying, "I'm a blonde with a busty figure and a slim waist. What more do you need for happiness?" She added that she loved partying, spending time with friends, and living it up because life is short, and it should be lived beautifully and joyfully. Kelsey wasn't overly concerned about the future, frequently changed lovers, and quickly spent any money she earned or received from admirers. At 23, Kelsey became pregnant again and gave birth to a son, Josh. The child's father didn't want to marry her or acknowledge his offspring. As modeling offers dwindled, Kelsey turned to social media to build an audience. She actively managed her accounts, posting revealing photos in swimsuits, lingerie, or barely covering her intimate areas. To be fair, these images were heavily edited, making her resemble a Barbie doll. She also loved to share shots taken in fashionable boutiques, popular nightclubs, and other glamorous spots and entertainment venues. Kelsey's social media profiles created an illusion of a wealthy, successful, and carefree life. It seemed the beauty had everything and was simply enjoying life to the fullest. In reality, the single mother of 2 small children was struggling to make ends meet but never learned to manage her finances wisely, spending any money she received on the very day she got it. Around 2016, Kelsey faced serious issues after an unfortunate incident involving her daughter. The girl was physically unharmed but severely traumatized and became withdrawn and mute. Therapy was recommended, along with sessions with renowned child psychiatrist Dr. Thomas Burchard, who practiced in Monterey, California. This fateful encounter led years later to a terrible tragedy. Who was Dr. Thomas Burchard? Dr. Thomas Kirk Burchard was born on February 16, 1948, in Boston, Massachusetts, to a family of a well-known architect and engineer. Later, his family moved to Virginia, where his father taught architecture at Harvard and the Architectural College at the Technological Institute. This is where the future psychiatrist spent his childhood and youth. Choosing not to follow in his father's footsteps, the young Thomas decided to pursue a career in medicine, specifically specializing in child psychology. After graduating from medical school and defending his thesis, he worked as a pediatric psychiatry resident in various renowned hospitals and lectured at colleges across the country. Eventually, Dr. Burchard was employed at a public clinical hospital on the Monterey Peninsula in California, where he worked for over 40 years as an incredibly sought-after pediatric psychiatrist. Dr. Burchard had an impeccable reputation. He easily connected with his young patients and took on even the most challenging and severe cases. He earned his doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley. According to Google Scholar, he had over 300 scientific publications, which were cited almost 40,000 times in total, and his Hirsch Index, a scientific productivity metric, was 81. Moreover, Dr. Thomas was known for being kind, responsive, and incredibly generous. His compassionate nature drove him to help those in need, particularly focusing on his young patients whose parents couldn't afford sessions. He also paid for hospital treatments for sick children from low-income families and assisted single mothers. Dr. Burchard lived for a long time with a woman named Judy Earp, who is variously described as his assistant and housekeeper, or as his lover and even fiancée. Regardless, she knew him better than anyone else, and was the first to notice certain peculiarities in his behavior indicative of early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. The elderly doctor, approaching his 70th birthday, became forgetful, absent-minded, and inattentive. He meticulously tried to hide this from his colleagues, constantly keeping diaries and notebooks where he recorded every detail, especially names, dates, and events, to avoid confusion. He always carried one of these notebooks in his breast pocket, containing his banking details, account numbers, passwords, and card pins. Another notable aspect of Burchard's behavior was that he, already a generous person, became very trusting, and the financial assistance he provided to those in need increased from hundreds to thousands of dollars. Dr. Thomas Burchard, a windfall for Kelsey Turner. When Kelsey first brought her daughter to Dr. Burchard's office, she lamented that she was raising 2 children alone and likely couldn't afford his costly services. To her surprise, the doctor offered to help her child for free, and after the appointment, gave the struggling single mother $300 for her children's needs. The blonde was astonished, but quickly realized that with tearful stories about her challenging life, she could extract more funds from the elderly man. At the next session, Kelsey, having prepared in advance, put on a whole performance, tearfully telling Dr. Burchard about her younger son's illness and lack of funds for expensive medications. This time, she boldly stated a fabricated amount and received it in full. Kelsey couldn't believe her luck. From then on, she regularly concocted tearful stories, extracting increasingly large sums of money from the trusting older man. Naturally, she spent the money not on her children, but on her own entertainment, designer clothes, as well as visits to cosmetologists and plastic surgeons. Unwilling to return to her native Virginia, Kelsey asked Thomas to pay for her rental housing in California, arguing it would be easier to find a job there, and the local climate was better for her children. It didn't take much to persuade the doctor, who simply paid the necessary amount for the apartment Kelsey liked. There were rumors that the odd pair were intimately involved, and this was why the elderly, respected doctor indulged every whim of the striking young blonde. While these rumors might have some basis, the men's magazine model claimed that Thomas had purely paternal feelings towards her and her children and helped selflessly. This was also echoed in court by Judy Earp, albeit with the caveat that Turner shamelessly exploited the doctor's kindness and his progressing dementia. It's worth noting that in addition to paying for rental housing, bills, and simply handing out large sums of cash for necessities, Thomas also rented a car for the young woman. However, it wasn't a practical family minivan suitable for safely transporting children, but a luxurious Mercedes-Benz convertible. Eventually, Kelsey realized that her modeling career was behind her. Her youth was fading, and offers for shoots had ceased entirely. Yet, she didn't consider burdening herself with any other job, living instead on the largesse of her elderly benefactor. Attempts to break free, blackmail, and threats. Over nearly 3 years of this peculiar relationship, Dr. Burchard spent around $500,000 on the blonde and her children. However, Kelsey squandered all the money, undergoing breast augmentation and liposuction in hopes of reigniting her modeling career. She indulged in endless luxuries, while her children were largely neglected amid her non-stop partying. This led to Kelsey's ex-husband successfully gaining sole custody of their daughter through the court, stripping Kelsey of her parental rights. This left her with only her younger son, whose father, as mentioned earlier, had never shown any interest in his child. When Thomas learned about this development, he was furious, not with the girl's ex-husband, but with Kelsey herself. He realized that she was a negligent mother who did not bother to care for her children and spent all the money meant for them on her own needs, entertainment, and outfits. Dr. Burchard decided to have a serious talk with Kelsey, informing her that he would no longer sponsor her lavish and idle lifestyle. In response, Kelsey threatened to spread rumors that the respected child psychiatrist harbored inappropriate intimate interests in his young patients. Of course, this was a falsehood, but any gossip on the matter could severely damage the reputation of the esteemed doctor and academic. Reluctantly, Burchard agreed to Kelsey's terms and continued to transfer money and pay her bills. In early 2019, Kelsey decided to move to Las Vegas with her son to try and revive her modeling career. Naturally, she expected Thomas, whom she continued to blackmail, to finance this venture. The doctor rented a house Kelsey had chosen and transferred the amount of money she requested. After this, Kelsey disappeared for 2 months, giving no sign of her whereabouts. The fateful trip. In late February 2019, Kelsey Turner resurfaced as she was running out of money. She called Thomas, sobbing, and began to tell him about her severe illness, inability to work, and struggle to provide for her son. However, when the doctor refused to help, Kelsey's tone changed abruptly, and she started threatening and blackmailing him again. It's important to note that Judy Earp had long been urging Dr. Burchard to report Kelsey to the police, revealing her blackmail and extortion. Judy also suggested involving Child Protective Services, given that Kelsey, already stripped of her parental rights over her older daughter, was incapable of adequately caring for her young son. In case the matter went to court, Dr. Burchard secured support from his colleagues, who were informed about the situation and promised to back him up. Earlier, Judy even tried to talk to Kelsey herself, hoping to persuade her to leave Thomas alone, but was only met with threats of retaliation. This time, Dr. Burchard decided to go to Las Vegas himself to verify Kelsey's claims, though he already knew the answer. Judy tried to dissuade him from the trip, but the elderly man was adamant. She then urged him to take her or one of his friends along. However, Thomas insisted that it was his personal problem and that he needed to resolve it himself. He embarked on his journey on March 1st, 2019. A body in the trunk amidst the desert. On the morning of March 7th, a group of tourists traveling through Nevada deviated from the main highway onto a dirt road leading to Lake Mead. En route, they spotted a solitary Mercedes-Benz convertible parked in the middle of the desert with its windows up and roof closed. The absence of anyone nearby seemed odd and suspicious. Driven by curiosity, the travelers approached and noticed one of the car windows was shattered. Peering inside, they discovered signs of a struggle, with bloodstains throughout the interior. The tourists immediately reported their grim discovery to the police. Law enforcement officers arrived at the scene around noon under the scorching sun and were instantly hit by an unbearable stench of decay. The source was quickly identified when the police opened the trunk. Beneath a pile of items and rags lay the lifeless body of an elderly man, next to him a blood-stained baseball bat. You may have guessed that the body belonged to Dr. Burchard, who had been missing for 5 days by that point. Judy had reported his disappearance on March 2nd when she couldn't reach Thomas at their scheduled time. She instantly feared something terrible had happened and promptly contacted the police, hoping he would be found alive. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The autopsy revealed numerous injuries on the elderly man's body, including abrasions, bruises, and superficial cuts. He had sustained several severe head injuries, likely inflicted with the baseball bat found beside him in the trunk. Part of his ear had been severed, and his hands bore numerous cuts, indicating a desperate attempt at defense. Also notable were bruises on his face with a peculiar imprinted pattern. Most horrifyingly, it seemed the man had been placed in the trunk while wounded but still alive, and had slowly suffocated under the intense desert sun. Main suspects and crime scene investigation. Since the car found at the scene was rented in Kelsey Turner's name, she immediately became the primary suspect. Judy provided the police with the address where the blonde lived and where the deceased doctor had headed, as the house was rented in his name. However, upon arrival, the police found no one there. Inside, containers of cleaning agents were scattered everywhere, and the air was still thick with the scent of household chemicals. It was clear that a hasty cleanup had been attempted to erase any evidence of the crime. The house was occupied by Turner, her 4-year-old son, and her new boyfriend, John Logan Kennison, along with 2 neighbors, Diana Pina and Jeremy Esherick. All had fled, making them suspects, as the petite blonde couldn't have inflicted such injuries on the doctor or placed his body in the car trunk by herself. The only person police managed to interview was Jeremy. He and his girlfriend, who had been visiting him, left the house while the doctor was still alive and unharmed. Jeremy recounted that his girlfriend had drunk too much and flirted with the doctor, attempting to get a couple of $100, mimicking Kelsey's tactics. Kelsey became enraged, accusing the woman of trying to steal Thomas from her. The 2 women almost fought, and Jeremy had to quickly take his girlfriend away from the house. He hadn't returned for several days and was unaware of the subsequent events. Police also learned from Judy that Dr. Burchard always carried a notebook with bank account details and passwords, which he often forgot. This notebook was missing, and large sums of money were withdrawn from 2 of his accounts on March 3rd. The accounts and cards were immediately blocked, and on March 21st, in Stockton, California, Kelsey and her boyfriend John were arrested after another attempt to withdraw money. For nearly 3 weeks, the couple, along with their child, had been hiding in motels, moving from place to place and paying in cash. They regretted not completely emptying Burchard's accounts initially and decided to do so later, planning to flee to Mexico with the money. However, by the time they tried again, the accounts were blocked, and the police arrived promptly. Reconstructing the timeline of events. While Kelsey and John adamantly denied any wrongdoing, a third participant in the events, Diana voluntarily surrendered to the police and narrated what transpired on the night of March 2nd. According to her, after Jeremy and his girlfriend left, Turner had a severe altercation with Dr. Burchard, angered by his declaration that he would not give her another cent. She threatened to tarnish his reputation by spreading rumors about the psychiatrist's inappropriate behavior with his young patients. As Kelsey became physically aggressive, the elderly man locked himself in a room. John, with a forceful shoulder thrust, broke down the door and severely struck the older man with a bat, causing a massive hematoma and a nosebleed. Diana rushed in, pleading for everyone to calm down. Seeing Thomas's condition, she urged them to take him to the hospital, fearing the consequences of their actions. After extracting a promise from the doctor that he would tell the police he was attacked and robbed by strangers, all 4 drove to the garage. Burchard was seated in the back of the car. Kelsey then instructed Diana to return to the house and clean up thoroughly, erasing all blood traces. Diana obediently started the cleanup, but soon heard Dr. Burchard's cries and the sounds of a struggle. Rushing back to the garage, she saw the couple brutally assaulting the elderly man, trapped between them in the car, unable to escape or defend himself. It turned out that Kelsey and Kennison never intended to take the man to the hospital. They planned to finish him off using the bat and a small knife, inflicting cuts. John also repeatedly hit the doctor in the face with the handle of his unloaded pistol, causing the peculiar patterned bruises. Diana was again ordered back to the house to continue cleaning. Fearing she might be next if she didn't comply, she left the garage. While she was still cleaning inside, she heard car engines and saw the couple's 2 vehicles leaving. A few hours later, only John's car returned, with Kelsey accompanying him. Diana remained unaware of the convertible's whereabouts until news reports surfaced about a car found in the desert with a body in the trunk. Trial and sentence. From the outset, Diana opted for a plea deal, agreeing to tell everything she knew. This helped her avoid charges of complicity, leading to a lighter sentence for evidence tampering, which resulted in only 3 years of imprisonment. The former lovers, on the other hand, stubbornly shifted the blame onto each other. However, proving their guilt was straightforward, as they left substantial evidence in the car, and their phones were traced to the desert on the night of March 2nd, at the location where they abandoned the car with the body. Kennison was found guilty of second-degree homicide and sentenced to 45 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 years. The situation with Turner was more complex. Shortly after her arrest, she declared her pregnancy, significantly delaying the trial. During her incarceration, she gave birth to a girl who, along with her son, was placed under the care of social services, as none of Turner's relatives were willing to assume such responsibility. In January 2023, following her attorney's advice, Kelsey admitted her guilt and was sentenced to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole no earlier than after 10 years. She is currently serving her sentence at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center in Las Vegas. In conclusion, it's worth noting that in February 2023, ABC's documentary series 20/20th Inches aired an episode titled A Model Murder, detailing the heinous crime committed by Turner and her boyfriend against Dr. Burchard.